Thank you and good afternoon to everybody. Um, we have a chance to catch up on time because unfortunately Amit couldn't be here as part of this panel. So hopefully we will be able to save some time. I'll try and see if that is possible. But the issue that we are tackling is probably one of the biggest roadblocks that we have to achieve what is the objective of this conference. You know, when we are talking about trying to reach 1 trillion by 2040, and in the morning McKinsey talked about a large part of that is domestically produced, and then there is also going to be imports. That's not how things have been, right now. So if you look at, depending upon what you include, whether the Indian chemical industry is a net positive for in terms of imports versus exports, depends upon what you include. But if you just take the feedstock, the evidence is very clear, right? We have a huge import bill. At last count, the numbers were something like $33 billion of imports, with 20 billion of that being bulk petchem downstream commodities. There are several intermediates and polymers like PVC, acetic acid, ethylene glycol, methanol, which are all substantial import bills for the country. In the morning session, we also talked about how there is a need for a cracker a year, but that's not been our track record so far. And then, of course, there are various other challenges that come in the way when we are talking about the feedstock. What was also interesting is in the morning session, there was a comparison of India versus Taiwan, Thailand, Vietnam, and against many of these countries that we compete with, there is some comparative advantage that we have. And one of the challenges that we continue to face is related to infrastructure and feedstock. So this becomes an extremely important topic as we look at how to take things forward. As Avalon and ICC, when government was looking at this PLI schemes across 2020 and 2021, we did a lot of work to try and bring the chemical industry into the PLI radius. And one of the challenges that we kept coming across is that as you look at the diversity of the chemical industry, moment you start looking at any PLI for the upstream products, then the PLI that you need to be providing for as a budget is really massive. So, when we therefore look at the feedstock problem, while there is a huge capital problem, because these are very capital intensive projects, and we'll find during the course of our discussion that addressing that capital risk and is a key challenge when we look at feedstock. PLI is not a solution clearly for it. A PLI may work on the specialty chemical side, but bringing a PLI for any large commodity chemical is really not workable. So then what are the options available? And that's what we are going to explore with this August panel that we have. Let me quickly introduce them. On my right, I have Arvinder Sani. He is the Executive Director for Petrochemicals at Indian Oil in the Business Development Division. So he's a out and out sales and marketing person. He's been with IOCL for a very, very long time, 1993 onwards. In fact, that's the characteristics of my panel here. I have Chandan here on my left, who's also been with Haldia Petrochemicals for a really long time, and also a veteran as far as the feedstock industry is concerned. And then on the extreme left, we have Mr. Shetty, who is an entrepreneur himself. So he's never worked for anybody else. So He's worked for himself, and that's the characteristic of this panel. Me as Avalon, I've never worked for anybody else. I founded this entity 30 years ago, and I've been at it for a fairly long time. So, but more important is the panel that I have are consisting of people who are ingrained in the feedstock industry and somebody who's at the receiving end, where feedstock is a very critical input which constrains his growth in some cases, makes him face a lot of volatility. So let me kickstart the discussion by going to Sony. In the morning, one of the things that was talked about was how the business model upstream for refineries is changing from oil to chemicals. With the kind of changes that are happening in the gasoline consumption, increased adoption of EVs, refineries are no longer built around the petroleum products. They are built around the chemicals. Now, this faces, of course, challenges for the downstream players in the chemical industry, in the sense that when the upstream players go ahead and add value to the output coming from the cracker, there is very little left behind for the chemicals which come out of it. So if you are producing propylene, you go ahead and put polypropylene plants, and then there is very little propylene then available downstream for an phenol or an oxo alcohol type projects. So what's the way in which
they are also going into that level only where the present petrochemical groups are going. Like for aromatics, they are going up to PX and PTA. If in the polyolefins field, they are also going up to PP, HDP, where the present refiners or integrated refinery and petrochemical people are going. They are not going into those phenols, and they are not going into deep downstream per se, that they are going to start compete with the downstream industry. They are not doing so as of now. The evidence shows that we are not, the big players are not doing that. So that clarification, because crude to chemicals, it seems that we are going into that the downstream, deep downstream chemical field. I totally, the evidence is not there. That is much I can say. And the plans are also not there. Now coming to Indian scenario, when we say crude to chemicals, yes, people are thinking of crude to chemicals, and but at the same time, we are not jettisoning, or we are not leaving the space where the refineries have to be there. The MS and diesel of the system has to be fed by these entities only. The HPCL, BPCL, IOCL, Reliance, they have to still go on feeding the nation. That is not going anywhere because of the population that is there, because of the urbanization that is going there. We are all saying that it is going to taper. Maybe the growth rate which was there, 8%, 9%, 3%, 6% of MS and diesel, that is not going to be there, but whatever is there has to be there. And when it comes down, it will come down in a methodical way, in a tapered way. And for that, it is coupled with the energy transition, that how EVs are going to come up, how hydrogen-fired vessels, hydrogen-fired vehicles will come up. With those kind of things, these comes, and as they come, they will release lot of feedstocks for petrochemicals. So that is naphtha and gas will come out of the product, and that is coupled with energy transition, and that is how it will happen, because we have 22 refineries. We are not going to close 22 refineries in India and go to crude to chemicals directly. That is not going to happen. At least first crude to chemicals coming to India will take at least 7 to 8 years from now. Even if you start planning it, at least 6 to 7 years it will take for first crude to chemicals to see the light of the day. So it is not an immediate issue. That is one thing. The other thing, as sir, you touched upon the downstream, how they will cater to it, or whether they will be able to get the proper feedstock or not. That is the issue has been there, because when we talk about polyolefins, also when we are making polypropylene and polyethylene and LLDP and LDP we are making. So there is a demand, there is an aspiration for the downstream industry that we also want to get the share of the pie. But sir, as you will also understand that each cracker today, when we are talking of 1 cracker per year or 2 crackers per year or whatever, that is the story. But each cracker will take at least $7 to $8 billion to make. for $7 to $8 billion when somebody is investing, then going into downstream, yes. When we are going into deep downstream, we are going to specialty chemicals, we are going to chemicals. We invite entrepreneurs to come together. We can have a kind of a partnership wherein I bring in the assured supply of feedstock, I bring in the capital, you bring in your technological input, you bring on your experience, your technology, which you have already been working. Then we can have a win-win situation wherein together we can move forward. It is not you win or I lose, that kind of a situation. So we are open to it. At least I can speak from my company that yes, we are open to those kind of scenarios wherein we can work together with the deep downstream players.
So when we say deep downstream, what would your definition be? I mean, where do you think the line will be drawn when you're looking at, if I were to just take the ethylene chain, or I mean, would you go ahead and make a vinyl chloride monomer or an EDC, or will you, go right down to PVC if you're going downstream, or if you're in propylene stream, would you go down to phenol, or would you prefer JVs in those directions? What would be the thinking?
At least as of now, the major players are already into PVC. They are already, we ourselves are making styrene. We are, some people I understand, I know on the industry that they are already going to make phenol. So there are already people who are going to make ACN or so. So those kind of things are going to come in a bulk level. But beyond this also there is a lot of ample avenues available, and nobody is making right now. We are not competing with anybody. The big players are not, nobody is making styrene in India right now. Nobody is making acetic acid in India right now. Nobody is making methanol in India right now. Nobody is making ACN in India right now. So if nobody is making, then there is no question of competing with anybody.
No, it's not for a question of competing. The question is, would you, as somebody who's putting the upstream investment, would you naturally go downstream up to that level and then throw open the products which are going downstream from there? So, a vinyl acetate monomer anybody can make, but acetic acid will be something that you will supply. Is that the kind of thinking that you're having?
Sir, it will be a case-to-case basis. Okay. What kind of proposals come on the table, what kind of people come together, and what kind of business propositions come into picture, we are open to it. And sir, I want to put the place that we don't have unlimited capex.
Okay.
So we also need capex. That is, it is not that we are overflowing with capital investments.
Okay. So you're open to, therefore, the message that I'm taking away is that you're open to forming JVs downstream as the way to try and solve some of the industry feedstock issues. As long as there is a partnership there, it's the right way to address this issue.
Of course, sir. That is the win-win situation that we perceive.
All right. Chandan, coming to your side, as you know, as you've heard what Indian Oil is talking about. You've of course been in this business as Haldia for a very long time. You acquired the Mitsubishi asset. You have acquired other assets as your way to grow. You also have acquired Lummus internationally. Interestingly, they have the propane dehydrogenation technology, PDH technology. There have been several such plants in China as a way to address the propylene feedstock problem. Given what you know about the Indian context, the cost structures and so on, do you think something like that or a cracker based on ethane rather than naphtha, are these viable options at all to look at addressing the feedstock issues in India?
I think that was around 5 questions bundled into one. So that's the great thing with the consultants. So you don't really know what to answer.
And then he was saying that he can save some time.
Yeah. No, that's okay. Number one, let me get one disclaimer. I mean, feedstock. So these, the last 5 years in the various conferences, people keep on talking about feedstock. Now, what is a feedstock? For Mr. Sani, the feedstock is crude. For us, the feedstock is naphtha, what he makes. For Mr. Shetty, the feedstock is down the line. So feedstock by itself would depend on the particular industry, the particular problems, and so on and so forth. So you can't have a very generalized this thing like there is no feedstock and that's why Indian chemical industry is not being able to prosper. I think that's a very simplistic way of avoiding the problem. I mean, it's not that. For example, in India, it seems, as was told in the morning, the monomers which we have, we don't seem to be having a market for it, like C4, C6, C8 when we are exporting. Like Haldia, for example, has been for the last 22 years producing benzene and butadiene and happily exporting around 90% of it. And the ones which we don't have, people are cribbing that, hey, you big guys, you don't give us monomer. I mean, I think Mr. Soni at Paradip also now and then gets this thing that we cannot develop because you big guys don't give us monomer. The fact remains is, look, for the chemical industry as a whole to really develop and quote unquote the feedstock issue to be settled, you have to act in unison. I mean, you can't be putting up a cracker based on somebody in year 3 will come and ask you for some ethylene, because ethylene is not something you can store and it's not a very easy thing to transport. I think Sonisab, till now no one has come for you in Paradip for propylene. Okay, so that's a case in point. No one has come to us for any major requirement of benzene. We are exporting 90% of our benzene, whereas at Haldia port itself, a whole lot of LAB is coming in, being imported. So why is this benzene not being used and LAB is being made? So is it really a feedstock issue or is it a lack of coordination, lack of whatever between the various manufacturers? Number two, and we are at almost at the end of the first day session, what really has not been even touched upon. When you talk of feedstock, and Sani Saab just said that it costs a bomb to make a cracker these days. It sounds great, sitting here and saying we need a cracker a year. But for somebody to put up a cracker, you need money. And no businessman is going to put in money unless there is sufficient spread. Today, between the spread of your raw materials and your finished product, we are far below the international spread levels for any investor to come in and put up a cracker. And if he does put up a cracker, why will he be charitable and say, hey, look, come, let me give you some subsidized monomer? Doesn't work. For example, a case in PVC. PVC, whenever we go to these things, people say, hey, you're bad guys, you're making India waste so much foreign exchange and you're 50% dependent on imported PVC. Over the last 2 years, what happened? One of the key ingredients which is used for PVC, the customs duty was brought down, and PVC's customs duty was brought up. So that gives some sort of a spread to the investors, and promptly 2 major projects were announced. Within 1 year, what happens? The basic customs duty on PVC is brought down, and the basic customs duty on the ingredients is brought up. And that's brilliant. And we talk here, talking about feedstock. I mean, come along. PDH and these are, I mean, see, you have so many different options. Yes, you're correct, Lamas has got a whole lot of technology. But at the end of the day, whether it is us or whoever it is putting up these sort of big money, or it's foreign investors, unless there is some sort of a long-term policy by the government, this feedstock issue is not going to be solved. We will be meeting once a year, nice setting, good lunch. We shall be talking about feedstock.
So, what about Mr. Shetty? You've heard the upstream players, and as a buyer of feedstock, what is the perspective that you bring to the table?
So, My conclusion in one simple statement is that both the statements are quite disappointing to me. It's really disappointing. Because I'll tell you the figure-wise is concerned, that okay, because everybody has given. Now I'm just talking about, that in India, the chemical industries basically have divided into 3-4 areas. One is that the multinational companies, another one Indian multinational companies, then Indian large companies, and Indian MSMEs. See, today my question is to both of you, as well as in the private sectors, how to take care of the MSMEs? Because they are in 50,000 in number. There are 50,000, the units are in this country. And as far as the feedstock is concerned, it is not taken care at all. This is number one. Number two, as far as the production of the feedstock which we require, I'm not talking the PVC, I'm talking the specialty chemicals. The specialty chemicals, let me talk. They consist of, for instance, what the products like, that mainly your ethyl acrylate or butyl acrylate, or you talk about the ethylene oxide, you talk about the propylene oxide, you talk about, the various acetic acid, these kind of these products which will give the value addition, by taking. Today, 60% of these products are being imported in this country, and that this is a huge quantity. And we are expecting these the 22 refineries and the one largest, the private sector who is producing the feedstock, to please take care of that sector. That is the most important thing for us. If you don't do that, I think again, as you say that, that we are coming back to the same square one. So we are talking all these things, that okay, the sustainability is concerned. Today we talk about, that okay, this what the decarbonization is concerned. You talk about, that okay, the innovation is concerned. You talk about the technology. But for a small business person, that okay, these 50,000 chemical people, their food is feedstock. If you can't give him the feedstock, where is the thinking power? Where is the power for him to work, do some work? So please provide this, sir. This is the most important thing for us. We are actually here. Today it has come to know that okay, since morning we talk about the same subject, but there is no clarity. Because all the sustainability, everything will come as a second stage. First, get us the feedstock. Because these, we are not interested in, that okay, because importing these kind of products. Another thing also, I will just give a small example. See, 21-22 was a very good year for all of us. And we did fantastic, that okay, because as far as the chemical industry is concerned. And suddenly, 22-23, most of the chemical industries, and at that time, the 21-22, all went to public, IPO, this, that, and all, the 21 EBITDA, 30 EBITDA, everything happened. You know that. And July, August, and September, and October, do you know that the maximum number of people have lost this profitability? What for? Because of the raw material cost. Volatile in the raw material cost. Imported, because all these people, thinking that business is going to be good, they actually, they kept huge stock with them, and the price of the products were 220, 230, 250 rupees per kg, it came down to 120, they made a huge loss. And in turn, that who have gone for a higher price in the public IPO, and everybody, their market capitalization is lost. So this is happening because we don't have the ready stock here. Feedstock, if it had been available in this country, the as and when required, just as that okay, so somebody mentioned, the snack, just, that in case, one is just in time and just in case. So just in case is also required, just in time is also required. So unnecessarily small people, it was not required for them to incur this kind of loss. That's number one. The growth, suppose you talk about innovation. If a feedstock itself is rationed or it is coming in a very limited way, where is the question of innovation? And the person who collects this kind of raw material also, if you make the finished product, and again he is rationing, and he will make it, convert into something else and make money and keep quiet. So this is the practical, sir, which is happening in the industry today, I can say that. We can talk all good things, but really speaking, let us get into the fact, there is a reality, 45 lakhs, the crores of rupees, this is going to be invested in the infrastructure, all this development will take place. Today, for a chemical man, for a specialty chemical man, the refineries, everybody is talking the same thing, O2F and O2C is going. It's a great opportunity for the refinery to change their dynamics. Instead of getting it, the old conventional selling only the kerosene and the diesel, please try to sell some chemicals, sir.
I think
This is what we should try to do.
yeah, no, I think one of the options that is clearly he's outlined is the way forward is to look at JVs. And I mean, for example, we talked in the morning about C3 being in short supply. Now there is propylene possible from Panipat. If industry is looking for it, one way is to look at this as an experiment and see how to take things forward in this positive manner. But I mean, everything that Chandan says also is true. At the end of the day, it all comes down to viability. It's not, you can't paint everything with one brush. While there are specific areas, benzene, you have excess availability, therefore you're exporting it, you're showing that you're competitive, but we're also able to very clearly bring, downstream players like an Aarti and others have prospered because of the availability of benzene in the domestic country, in the domestic market at competitive prices. So clearly this issue is an issue if we have to touch this $1 trillion, and therefore that's what we're really attempting to do. So I hope you've got an idea of how this issue will need to get looked at. There are options like JVs that are possible. We haven't touched on aspects like the sustainable raw materials as the way to move forward. Hydrogen, lots of capacities are being established. Maybe some of that will address some of these issues. So hopefully we will, when we meet next year, we'll have some action on the ground and maybe a few examples specifically to talk about. Thank you very much.